So here's where that breadboard slot's got to be cut. Check this out. Right in this face frame, the top rail, from here to here, and it's got to be 7/8 of an inch wide, so I can put a 3/4 inch breadboard in there. So there's several different ways to do this. You could try it with a jigsaw. It would never be straight. You could try it with a plunge cutting saw, but then you still have to clean it up with a jigsaw or a handsaw or something. The safest way I think of to do this is with a router. To make the template is really simple. I started by ripping a long piece of 1-inch stock because I'm going to use a 1/2 inch router bit and a 5/8 inch OD template guide. And that way I just have to make my template 1/8 of an inch bigger than the hole I want to cut. So it's got to be 1/8 of an inch wider and 1/8 of an inch longer. We'll look at that again when I get that router bit out and that router. So I rip my stock to 1 inch, and all I got to do is sandwich it in between two rails on both sides so that I end up with my 1 inch wide slot in the center, and I'll separate these so that I end up with the 16 inch, it'd be a 16 1/8 inch slot in the center, and then I'll take these pieces and glue them on to the back as guides, so I can set this thing right on top of this rail. It'll be exactly 3.5 inches wide, and it'll hug the rail and it won't move around much. I can put one clamp on it, and I can route out the slot for that breadboard. This is pretty simple. I've laid out the center of my workpiece here for the template, and I measured back from the center in both directions, so I have my opening right here. So all I have to do, spread these apart and put some 2P10. I'm going to use 2P10 to assemble this entire template. And the 2P10 is only going to go up to that line. There's the first piece, and here's the second one right there. And then I'll take this piece and spray it, set it down here, and just hold these together. This is a one-time template, so I'm not going to put any pocket screws in it or anything. Just have to hold it together for just a couple of seconds. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Extremely fast way to put together a template. I just have to line up the inside rail with my layout line right here. And that's the length of the cut. And like I said before, the width of this rail, that 1 inch width, is 1/8 of an inch over the size of the slot that I want to cut. And now I can go ahead and put 2P10 on this piece too, right up to that line. It's a really handy glue to use, especially for a one-time template like this that you're not going to use over and over and over again. If it was a template that I was going to use repeatedly, I'd put it together with yellow glue and pocket screws too. And I can take this whole thing and run it through my surface planer, and if you don't have a surface planer, you can just sand it down until it's smooth so it's nice and easy to run your router on. And if you use it a bunch, put some wax on it too. You know, kind of rub a candle on top of it and wax it so it's nice and slick. So that's what it looks like, nice and clean on both sides. And now I'll take my stock and I'll center it right through, right across this cut. And this material is 2 3/4, so I can find the center. This is right there is the center. Let me get my pencil a little bit sharper here. So the center mark on this is right there. And we'll put another center mark right here, just over 1/2 inch. First, I centered the template right on top of my layout marks, and then I scribed a little line on the outside of my workpiece, just like that. And I brought that line up on top of the template. And now that that line's on top of the template, all I have to do is measure the back set from the face of the template. It's 1 5/8". I've measured in 1 5/8" right near the opening on both sides. And I'm just going to use those marks to align my stop on the back side of the template. So we'll put some 2p10 right on that stop and spray the template with the activator, and then just set this down on those 2 marks and hold it there for just a minute. I can set my workpiece in there, that rail, put the 2p10 on the second stop, and there is a complete template. Here's the router I'm going to use in the template. Look, this takes all the guesswork out of it. All the possibility that I could make a stupid mistake with a circular saw or a hand saw or a jigsaw, because I'm going to depend instead on this router. It's got a collet on it. Some people call it a collet. It's a template guide. And there's the bit. And you can see the close tolerance of the bit to the guide. The bit's a 1/2 inch cutter, and the guide's 5/8". That's why we have the 1/8 of an inch offset all the way around the template. So all I have to do is bury this thing right through the wood. I got a piece of scrap MDF underneath it, and I'm just cutting this 1 step at a time. The dust collector doesn't get all the dust, and you got to get that dust out of the ends, or the template guide will hit it and you won't be cutting right to your template. And there is a perfect slot. I've got both face frames laid out on my table here just to get my pieces oriented. I'm not going to drill them right here. I'm going to drill them over there at my Craig pocket hole machine, the Journeyman. But I wanted to mark all of my pieces to make sure I drill pocket holes in the right location on the back of each one of these stiles and rails. You notice this face frame is kind of simple in some ways. Both of the stiles are on the outside, and they go all the way from the top to all the way to the bottom, and the center stiles are kind of intervening, whereas this one's really kind of different. This one's got a top rail that's going to be flush with the top inside of the box, and it's going to extend up above the top of the cabinet, and it'll stop the cushion on the seat from sliding off. In order to do that, it had to be continuous. But the bottom rail isn't. It's intervening between the 2 stiles. So this is a pretty strange little face frame. I could screw this up, literally. I could screw this up real bad, real quick. And that's why I'm going to take blue tape and mark every single one of these pieces so I know exactly where to drill my pocket holes. To get both your holes into this narrow 1.5 inch stock, you got to align your stock with this edge right near the cutter, right near the drill bit. Perfectly symmetrical. I'm always putting my blue tape against the table so I don't mess this up. Now this is why pocket screw joinery is so handy. All the screw holes are in the back of the face frame. You're never going to see them, and it's really simple to assemble all of this. I like to still use glue. Like I said before, I like to put a little glue into these pocket joints. It's just another layer of insurance. You just need a really flat surface. And I like to use this tabletop with a track that I've installed, but there are other ways to do this. You can just use a regular table and a different style of clamp. Oh, and look at that. Already I've got this piece in reverse, don't I? These pocket screws have to go up toward the top. Duh. I'm going to wipe off that glue. There we go. It's so easy to make a mistake doing this stuff. I'm going to put the clamp right over that joint. You always want it near the screws. These are self-drilling screws. And sometimes they'll push the work pieces apart a little bit, just a little, as they start to thread in. But it won't matter because you'll draw them tight and flush if you keep your clamp nice and snug on your workpiece. You notice that one pushed it away quite a bit, but it still drew it nice and tight, right where I wanted it. I'm using an impact driver this time. And that's because I'm driving these screws into solid oak, not softwood. And I need that extra torque, but I'm being really careful with it. I'm not spinning this thing. I'm feathering the trigger like this, just gently, until that screw bottoms out. Pocket screws make this so easy. If both these openings weren't for drawers, in other words, there's going to be one big drawer in here and two drawers in here, so you're not going to be able to see any of these pocket holes in here. But if the openings were for doors, I might have thought about using dominoes in the face frame and in the cabinet box instead of pocket screws. But seeing as how there are a lot of people that are probably watching these videos that don't have a domino machine and, you know, don't have the money, they don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on tools and stuff, and they want to still do really nice work, hey, Craig pocket hole jig, you can do an awful lot with it. Normally, I like to mount drawer guides. This is a little bit of a different kind of drawer guide. It's a very heavy-duty drawer guide. I'm putting my porta-john in here on a drawer so it's going to pull out, and I want it to have, you know, really good support. But normally I install drawer guides so that they're flush to the face frame. And that way when they come out, they clear the face frame easily. And in this case, you can see I furred this out with a little piece of 16-inch plywood. I make sure that I have in stock 16th, 8th, quarter, all kinds of different thicknesses of plywood. So it's real easy to fur something out. There's probably a better way to do this, but I'm not a cabinet guy and I don't know what it is, but this is what I do. Now on this side, the face frame's considerably proud of the side here, so I could fur out this side so it's flush with the face frame too. And I talked about this when I did the drawing, but I wanted to cover it one more time so you wouldn't make a silly mistake and get all upset with yourself, because it's really, like, that's the worst thing you can do is get upset with yourself, get really pissed off. If I were to fur this out so it's flush like I did on this side, since there's a door on this side, I mounted this little scrap here just to mock up a door. Since there's a door on this side, if the door can only swing open 90 degrees, or even if it can swing open a little bit more than 90 degrees, if you mount the drawer guide flush, the drawer will not open without hitting the door. And if the door won't open any further, the drawer won't open. And you can guess how I know this. I think it took me 2 or 3 times to remember this lesson. So I'm going to fur this out considerably past flush. In fact, I have to fur it out so it's past the face of the door. And you can actually measure that real easy with that mock-up in here. That's 1 3/4 inches that I've got to come out to seriously clear that door when it's open. And that's what I'll do. And you're going to see this big chunk of furring in here, and that's why it's there. So far, the drawers I've installed, the drawer guides I've installed have been on the bottom like these two, but this opening here has 2 drawers in it, like a drawer bank. And when I do this, like I said, I'm not a cabinet maker. I don't have a lot of experience with this, but this is the system I use. It's pretty foolproof. I cut a block of wood that's exactly the distance between one drawer guide and the next. And I use that block of wood to install my backing. And I also take that block of wood and I can kind of slip it out part way, and it'll support the drawer guide as well. So I can set the drawer guide right on top of that, adjust the front so it's right where I want it. And usually you want to take a Vicks bit and run a hole right there. It's a lot easier to start that screw, and I usually put the first screw in one of these little elongated holes, and that way if you don't get the right setback from the front, you can tap that back and adjust it so it matches all the others before driving in any more screws. There we go.